Okay, so have you ever like dreamed of just picking up and moving to, say, Paris?
Mm-hmm.
Learning a new language, really immersing yourself in a new culture, all while taking care of adorable children.
Right.
It's kind of that image, right, we see when we think, becoming an au pair. But is it actually all sunshine and croissants, or are there like some hard truths lurking under the surface?
Yeah.
Let's find out. You sent over some really interesting things from RoleCatcher about what it really takes to do this whole international leap.
Yeah, I think, you're right to kind of question those glossy brochures and those like too good to be true kind of things. Because being an au pair, it really is a unique experience. It's living and working with a host family in another country, and it's a cultural exchange.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also a real job, and it has real responsibilities that go beyond just, teaching kids how to say bonjour.
And RoleCatcher does not shy away from that, especially like when they start talking about the skills and experience that you need. Like they're pretty upfront about needing, prior childcare experience.
Yeah.
This isn't just, oh, I babysit every once in a while. This is a whole different ball game.
It is. We're talking about being a primary caregiver in like a foreign environment,
Right.
potentially handling, multiple kids, different ages, different needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And it goes even beyond that, right? Like the way they describe the role, it's not just childcare. They mention light housekeeping, which, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But they also mention grocery shopping. And I feel like that signals, hey, we expect you to have a certain level of like independent action here. What do you think?
I think it's a really great observation because it is. Unlike a typical 9 to 5 where you clock out and go home,
Right.
as an au pair, you are living at your workplace. You
Yeah.
are sharing a home. You are navigating different routines, different parenting styles, potentially. And that requires you to be adaptable, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be in constant communication with the family to make sure that everyone's needs are getting met.
And you're also relying on that family for more than just, a paycheck. It's housing. It's often meals. So it's intertwined.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And that's why, this whole idea of being an au pair, it's so much more than what the job description might seem on the surface.
Right.
And yes, you have the travel, you have that cultural immersion, that chance to really dive in and become fluent in another language.
Mm-hmm.
Those are huge perks.
Oh, for sure.
But you also have to be prepared for kind of that less glamorous side too.
Which the source does not shy away from. Like they talk about potential for homesickness, navigating daily life in a language that maybe you're not like 100% fluent in yet, and even a level of dependence on the host family.
Yes. And that dependence can be challenging.
Yeah.
Especially when things get tough. And remember those sample interview questions that RoleCatcher had on their website?
Yes.
Like, how would you handle a homesick child? And I love this. When you're feeling homesick yourself.
Whoa.
Like, that's getting real.
Oof.
Yeah.
Talk about a high pressure scenario. It's like you're not just managing logistics, you're managing your own emotions, and you're managing a potentially very emotional child
Right.
in a culture that you might not be familiar with.
Exactly. And that brings up a whole other, a skill set that we're talking about. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness, These are not things that are, always listed on a job description.
Yeah.
But they're so important, right? They
Yeah.
can really make or break your experience.
Especially since, the source is very clear. This is not your traditional career path. There's no corporate ladder to climb here.
Right.
It's more about that life experience and what you take away from it. Which kind of begs the question, what are you, as like a potential au pair, what are you hoping to gain from this experience? Because even though, moving up in the role is probably not going to happen,
Right.
the skills that you can pick up along the way, kind of impressive, right?
Oh, sure.
Like childcare, organization, understanding different cultures.
Huge.
Huge.
Those are huge EEs.
Yeah.
Like if you're thinking about
Yeah.
any kind of field where that matters,
Totally.
that's a big deal. It's like,
You're kind of building a resume of like experiences instead of just job titles, which I think can be really valuable.
Yeah.
Especially like later on down the road when you're like, oh, wow, I actually have to think about
right.
what transferable skills I have. Like this forces you to do that.
Yeah. It's like learning to think on your feet, but like international scale.
Yes, exactly.
And this is where I feel like having some kind of like
Yeah.
system to keep track of it all would be amazing,
For sure.
which made me think about RoleCatcher.
They have like CV building, the resume stuff,
Yeah.
the interview questions, even with like the AI feedback.
Right.
And then career path guidance too, all like in one place. That feels.
Yeah, I think having something like that that's centralized can be a game changer,
Mm-hmm.
especially when, you're likely applying to multiple different families, maybe even multiple different agencies.
Oh, yeah,
It can be really overwhelming trying to like wrangle all of that information, all of that preparation by yourself.
totally.
So, yeah, that's smart to have it all in one spot.
Speaking of overwhelming,
Yeah.
the source talks a lot about like needing these soft skills, right?
Right.
Communication, being socially aware.
Yeah.
What kind of situations are they talking about here? What's going to really put those skills to the test?
Okay, so imagine you're living in a new home.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to navigate everyone's routines in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they have a totally different parenting style
Oh, yeah,
than what you're used to.
for sure.
Maybe you are the one who has to kind of bridge that language gap between like the kids and the parents,
Oh, yeah.
or like you're the one helping the kids adjust to a new school, maybe even a new neighborhood if they moved.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like not always easy things to do.
Right, right. And let's not forget,
Yeah.
like the classic
Oh yeah.
au pair dilemma. How do I explain to my host parents
Uh-huh.
why their precious little darling decided to like redecorate the walls with permanent marker?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Like how do you
It's
even
diplomacy skill.
diplomacy skills? It's
It's
like
non-negotiable.
essential. And this made me think about like if you're getting ready for like an application and they're going to ask about those things.
Right.
It's good to think about like
Yes.
when have I had to be really adaptable? When have I had to be really patient and resourceful? Or
Sure.
just like,
Yeah.
incredibly diplomatic in some kind of tricky childcare situation.
Exactly. Like having those anecdotes ready to go, that's gold.
Totally.
Because anyone can say, "Oh, I'm a really flexible person," but like
Yeah.
give me an example. And I think this is where
Yeah.
those real life examples are so key, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And it's that kind of preparedness that not only I think helps you get the job,
Mm-hmm.
but it helps you really thrive once you are there.
Totally, totally. And speaking of landing the role, the source talks a lot about agencies and how they act as this kind of like intermediary, right?
Mhm.
Between, hopeful au pairs and the families.
Yeah.
But they also say, hey, like, don't just take our word for it. You really need to do your own research.
Yeah.
In the age of like online everything,
Mhm.
what does that even mean anymore?
Right. Well, and it is important to keep in mind that agencies, while they're very helpful and they do a lot of good work, they are still a business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They are a business,
Yeah.
and they are trying to make money,
Yeah.
and they're trying to like make those placements.
Oh, yeah.
So as much as they vet the families, and as much as they try to do their due diligence, you can't solely rely on their assessment
Oh, for sure.
of a family.
Yeah.
It's just like dating.
Ooh, okay.
Like you wouldn't
Well-
just rely on your friend to describe someone to you, and then you go on a date with them.
Right. Terrifying, but accurate analogy.
Yeah, that's true.
A little creepy, but
No, it's true. But it is. It's like
yeah.
we do so much more online stalking for like a first date
Yeah.
than we do for like a job that involves living with people.
Totally. Totally. And you have so much information at your disposal.
Right.
Right? So go beyond like what the agency's providing in their profile. Use things like social media. So
Okay.
like get a sense of like the family dynamic. What are their values? What does their lifestyle look like?
Oh, Chris.
Do they travel all the time? Are they like super outdoorsy? Is their online presence like very curated and perfect?
Or is it a little bit more like this is the messy reality of our lives, and
Right.
and there's no right or wrong answer,
Right.
but it's just information to help.
Yeah, it's almost like you're building a compatibility profile
Yes.
as much as a job profile
100%.
to see like, are our expectations actually aligned?
Because let's be real.
Yeah.
Going into a situation where like your expectations are totally misaligned with the family you're living with,
Yeah.
like recipe for disaster.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is another area where like having really clear and upfront communication from the get-go is so key. And I don't know that RoleCatcher necessarily digs into this as much as like,
Oh, you mean like having those sometimes awkward but very important, like, let's just get this out on the table conversations before you show up with your suitcase.
before you show up.
Right. It's like, what happens if somebody has a severe nut allergy?
Totally.
Like, are there expectations around like discipline?
Right. Or like, can I drive the car?
Yeah. Can I drive the car?
Like all of those things that like you might not even think about until you're there.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I feel like those conversations, though, can get
Oh, yeah.
extra tricky when you think about, like,
100%.
cultural differences.
Right.
Because what might be totally normal
Yeah.
as an expectation in one culture
Totally.
could be, like, a huge no-no.
100%, which is why
But another culture.
those soft skills,
Yeah.
the communication, the self-awareness, the ability to, like, read a room, essentially, like, those are non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to, like, navigate those nuances,
Well, yeah.
advocate for yourself when you need to, and, like, do it all while maintaining, like, a positive relationship with the family.
Which
It's a lot.
it is a lot.
Yeah.
And while I'm all for, like, being prepared, is there a point where, like, you can overthink it, right? Where you can get so bogged down in the, well, what if this and what if that?
Right.
That you never actually take the leap.
So
It's a tough one, right? It's like you want to be, like, realistic and prepared,
Right.
but also open to, like, hey, this is an adventure. Things are going to happen.
Right, exactly. And that's where I think, like, the self-awareness piece comes in. And that's something else that RoleCatcher talks about, too, is, like, knowing yourself and knowing your limits and being able to, like, advocate for yourself if you need to, and having, like, a backup plan if things don't work out.
Yeah, right. Like, you're not responsible for it. Like,
it's not just about the kids.
Yeah, it's about you.
It's about you, yeah. And it's a lot of responsibility for someone to take on, potentially at, like, a young age,
Totally. And speaking of things that, RoleCatcher doesn't really, like, get into the nitty-gritty, what about, like, the legal stuff? Like, what about visas, working permits? Like, what happens if you, like, need to piece out of a host family situation early?
Yeah.
Those are all pretty important questions.
Oh, for sure.
That we didn't really cover.
100%. And that is, like, where I would say that's on you.
Yeah.
That's on you to research.
Right.
Because those legal aspects, those logistical things, they are so important. And they are very much location dependent as well.
Right.
So, like, what you need to do to be an au pair in France is going to be different from Spain.
Totally different.
Right. So that's a whole other, like,
It's like the fine print on the travel brochures, right?
Yes, totally. Like,
not as glamorous.
It's important, but not exciting to think about.
Right. But, like, could really make or break the experience.
Exactly. Knowing your rights, knowing your responsibilities, making sure you have support if you need it.
Yeah.
And just being realistic, about, like, the gravity of this decision.
For sure. But hopefully, like, still an amazing adventure, right?
Absolutely.
The chance to learn and grow and, like,
Yeah.
have some incredible experiences.
100%. Yeah.
But, just, like, any journey worth taking, like,
Right.
you got to prepare for it.
You got to prepare.
Right.
And part of that preparation is mental preparation, It's going in with your eyes wide open, being ready to, like, embrace, like, all of the rewards that come with something like this, but also the challenges that, like, inevitably come with it,
Yeah.
Because it's usually, like, those challenges that, like, you learn and grow the most from.
So true.
You
Love it. So for you, dear listener, if this whole au pair thing is calling your name, dive into those resources, ask those tough questions, and, like, get ready for a really amazing ride.
100%.
Just remember to pack your common sense along with, your sense of adventure.
Yes, and maybe a good phrase book.
Ooh, always a good idea. Until next time, happy diving.